Question 1. Operational review demonstrates that while the organization has implemented various technical security measures, there is a lack of a formal, documented process for categorizing data based on its sensitivity and regulatory impact, and consequently, inconsistent application of data handling procedures across different departments. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance requirements for data classification and handling? Option A. Focus on enhancing perimeter security and endpoint protection, assuming that robust technical controls will inherently safeguard all data regardless of its classification. Option B. Prioritize data accessibility for all employees to facilitate business operations, with a general guideline to be cautious with sensitive information rather than enforcing strict classified handling protocols. Option C. Develop and implement a comprehensive data classification scheme that defines sensitivity levels and mandates specific handling procedures, storage, access, transmission, retention, disposal for each level, ensuring these procedures are integrated into operational workflows and communicated through mandatory training. Option D. Implement a data retention policy that sets a uniform retention period for all data types and a standard disposal method, without first classifying data to determine appropriate retention and disposal timelines. The correct answer is C. Develop and implement a comprehensive data classification scheme that defines sensitivity levels and mandates specific handling procedures, storage, access, transmission, retention, disposal for each level, ensuring these procedures are integrated into operational workflows and communicated through mandatory training. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the operational need for data accessibility with stringent regulatory requirements for data protection and handling. The complexity arises from ensuring that data classification is not merely a theoretical exercise, but is actively and consistently applied across all data life cycles, from creation to disposal, to mitigate risks of unauthorized access, breaches, and noncompliance. The CSCS professional must navigate potential conflicts between departmental needs and overarching compliance mandates, demanding a nuanced understanding of both the technical and legal aspects of data security. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves establishing and enforcing a comprehensive data handling policy that is directly informed by a robust data classification scheme. This policy must clearly define procedures for labeling data based on its classification level, dictating how it should be stored, accessed, transmitted, retained, and ultimately disposed of. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data privacy and security, e.g., GDPR if the jurisdiction were EU, or relevant U.S. federal laws like HIPAA or NIST guidelines if U.S., mandate such structured approaches to ensure data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Adhering to these defined procedures, including regular audits and training, is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and meeting compliance obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on technical security controls without a corresponding data classification scheme is insufficient. While firewalls and encryption are vital, they are reactive measures. Without understanding what data needs the most protection, based on classification, resources might be misallocated, and sensitive data could remain inadequately secured. This fails to meet the proactive requirements of many data protection regulations that emphasize risk assessment and tailored controls based on data sensitivity. An approach that prioritizes data accessibility over strict adherence to handling procedures, even for classified data, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This directly contravenes the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, often enshrined in data protection laws. It increases the likelihood of data breaches, unauthorized disclosure, and misuse, leading to severe penalties and reputational damage. An approach that treats data retention and disposal as an afterthought, without clear, documented procedures tied to classification, is also problematic. Regulations often specify maximum retention periods and secure disposal methods to prevent data from lingering unnecessarily and becoming a liability. Neglecting this aspect can lead to noncompliance with data minimization principles and increased risk of data exposure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory framework for the specified jurisdiction. This involves 1. Identifying all data types processed and stored. 2. Developing a clear, tiered data classification scheme based on sensitivity and regulatory impact. 3. Creating detailed data handling procedures for each classification level, covering the entire data lifecycle. 4. Implementing technical and administrative controls to enforce these procedures. 5. Providing regular training to all personnel. 6. Establishing mechanisms for ongoing monitoring, auditing, and updating of policies and procedures to ensure continued compliance and adapt to evolving threats and regulations. Question 2. Risk assessment procedures indicate that following a significant cyber incident that disrupted critical business operations, the organization's disaster recovery plan was partially effective, but did not fully account for the specific attack vector used. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations for incident response and disaster recovery post-assessment? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the incident's impact on critical business functions. Evaluate the effectiveness of the existing disaster recovery plan against the actual event, and update the plan based on lessons learned and identified gaps. Option B. Focus solely on the technical recovery of IT infrastructure, ensuring all servers and networks are operational, and address data integrity concerns later. Option C. Deploy new, advanced disaster recovery technologies to prevent future incidents, bypassing a formal review of the current plan's shortcomings. Option D. Immediately restore all affected systems to their pre-incident state, without further analysis to minimize downtime. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the incident's impact on critical business functions. Evaluate the effectiveness of the existing disaster recovery plan against the actual event, and update the plan based on lessons learned and identified gaps. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need to restore critical business functions with the long-term implications of security and compliance. A rushed or incomplete approach to incident response and disaster recovery can lead to significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties. The pressure to resume operations quickly can tempt organizations to bypass essential security and compliance checks, making a robust risk assessment crucial. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the incident's impact on critical business functions and the effectiveness of existing disaster recovery plans, followed by a targeted update to those plans based on lessons learned. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement mandated by many regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and business continuity. Specifically, regulations often require organizations to regularly test and update their incident response and disaster recovery capabilities to ensure they remain effective against evolving threats and business needs. A thorough risk assessment ensures that updates are prioritized based on the likelihood and impact of future incidents, thereby optimizing resource allocation and strengthening overall resilience. Incorrect approach is analysis. Prioritizing the immediate restoration of all systems without a thorough assessment of the incident's root cause and the effectiveness of current recovery procedures is an incorrect approach. This bypasses the opportunity to learn from the incident, potentially leaving vulnerabilities unaddressed and increasing the risk of similar or more severe incidents in the future. It fails to meet regulatory expectations for post-incident analysis and continuous improvement, focusing solely on technical recovery of systems without considering the broader business impact and the integrity of data is also incorrect. Many regulations emphasize the protection of sensitive data and the continuity of essential business services. A purely technical recovery might restore functionality, but could compromise data confidentiality, integrity, or availability, leading to regulatory breaches and loss of customer trust. Implementing new, untested recovery solutions without a proper risk assessment and integration into existing disaster recovery plans is another incorrect approach. While innovation is important, deploying unverified solutions during or immediately after a critical incident can introduce new risks, destabilize operations, and fail to meet compliance requirements for documented and tested recovery processes. This approach neglects the due diligence required to ensure the reliability and security of recovery mechanisms. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach incident response and disaster recovery by first understanding the full scope and impact of the incident through a detailed risk assessment. This assessment should inform the subsequent steps, including the evaluation and updating of existing plans. The decision-making process should be guided by regulatory requirements, ethical obligations to protect stakeholders, and the organization's risk appetite. A structured approach, emphasizing documentation, testing, and continuous improvement, is essential for building and maintaining a resilient and compliant security posture. Question 3. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing the full suite of recommended controls for NIST CSF Tier 3 would be significantly more expensive than a more streamlined approach focusing only on the most critical security functions identified by a cursory review. The organization is a U.S.-based entity handling personally identifiable information (PI) and is subject to various federal data protection laws, which approach best balances regulatory compliance, risk mitigation, and resource allocation. Option A. Conduct a thorough gap analysis against NIST CSF Tier 3, identify all deficiencies, and then prioritize remediation efforts based on the identified risks, even if it means a higher initial investment. Option B. Negotiate with regulators to accept a less stringent compliance standard based on the organization's current budget constraints. Option C. Implement only the minimum security controls that appear to address the most obvious risks, as identified by the cursory review, to minimize immediate expenditure. Option D. Focus on implementing the cheapest available security solutions that offer some level of protection, assuming that cost savings will allow for future, more comprehensive upgrades. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough gap analysis against NIST CSF Tier 3, identify all deficiencies, and then prioritize remediation efforts based on the identified risks, even if it means a higher initial investment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security compliance, balancing the cost of implementing robust controls against the perceived risk and the potential benefits of compliance. The professional challenge lies in moving beyond a purely financial calculation to a comprehensive risk assessment that aligns with regulatory mandates and ethical obligations. A superficial cost-benefit analysis can lead to underinvestment in critical security measures, exposing the organization to significant legal, financial, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach not only addresses immediate cost concerns, but also establishes a sustainable and effective security posture that meets or exceeds regulatory expectations. The correct approach involves a thorough gap analysis against the relevant regulatory framework, followed by a risk-based prioritization of remediation efforts. This approach acknowledges that compliance is not merely a financial transaction, but a legal and ethical imperative. By identifying specific gaps against the chosen framework, e.g., NIST CSF for a U.S.-based organization handling sensitive data, an organization can precisely understand its deficiencies. Prioritizing remediation based on the severity of the risk posed by each gap ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical vulnerabilities first. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and prudent risk management mandated by most regulatory bodies. For instance, a failure to implement adequate access controls, identified as a significant gap, would require immediate attention due to the high risk of unauthorized data access, a direct violation of many data protection regulations. An approach that solely focuses on the lowest cost remediation options without a comprehensive gap analysis is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a misunderstanding of regulatory requirements, which often prescribe specific control objectives rather than just outcomes. For example, simply implementing a basic firewall might be cheaper than a next-generation firewall with advanced threat detection. But if the regulation requires advanced threat detection capabilities, the cheaper option would be non-compliant and ethically questionable due to the increased risk to data subjects. Similarly, an approach that prioritizes remediation based on ease of implementation rather than risk level ignores the fundamental purpose of compliance, protecting sensitive information and individuals. This can lead to a false sense of security while critical vulnerabilities remain unaddressed, creating a significant ethical and legal liability. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This begins with clearly identifying all applicable regulatory requirements. Next, conduct a comprehensive assessment to identify gaps between current practices and these requirements. Subsequently, perform a risk assessment for each identified gap, considering the likelihood of an incident and the potential impact. Based on this risk assessment, prioritize remediation efforts, focusing on high-risk areas first, even if they are more costly. Document all decisions, assessments, and remediation plans thoroughly. This systematic process ensures that compliance efforts are risk-informed, legally sound, and ethically responsible, moving beyond a simple cost-benefit calculation to a robust security and compliance program. Question 4. The control framework reveals that the organization's current security policies are outdated and do not adequately address emerging threats. As the certified security compliance specialist, which of the following approaches is the most appropriate for developing and implementing updated security policies, standards, and procedures? Option A. Prioritize the procurement and deployment of the most advanced security technologies available, with the expectation that these will inherently improve the security posture and necessitate policy updates later. Option B. Immediately adopt and adapt the security policies and procedures of a leading competitor in the industry, assuming their practices are compliant and effective. Option C. Focus on drafting a highly detailed and exhaustive security policy document covering all conceivable security scenarios, without immediate consideration for implementation feasibility or employee awareness. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify the organization's specific threats, vulnerabilities, and the potential impact of security incidents. Then develop policies and procedures based on these findings. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify the organization's specific threats, vulnerabilities, and the potential impact of security incidents. Then develop policies and procedures based on these findings. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for a robust security policy with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the dynamic nature of the threat landscape. Security compliance specialists must not only understand the technical aspects of security, but also the legal and regulatory obligations that underpin policy development and enforcement. The pressure to deliver a comprehensive policy quickly, without adequate foundational work, can lead to significant compliance gaps and operational risks. Careful judgment is required to prioritize actions that yield the most effective and compliant security posture. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment as the foundational element for developing security policies, standards, and procedures. This approach is right because it directly aligns with the principle of risk-based security, a cornerstone of most regulatory frameworks, including those relevant to the CSCS exam. By identifying, analyzing, and prioritizing risks, an organization can ensure that its security controls and policies are proportionate to the threats it faces and the value of the assets it protects. This ensures that resources are allocated effectively to address the most critical vulnerabilities, thereby meeting legal and regulatory requirements for due diligence and reasonable security measures. Furthermore, a risk-based approach facilitates the development of relevant and actionable security awareness training, as it can be tailored to address the specific risks employees are likely to encounter. An approach that bypasses a formal risk assessment and instead focuses solely on replicating competitor policies is professionally unacceptable. This fails to address the unique risk profile of the organization, potentially leading to policies that are either overly burdensome and inefficient or insufficient to protect against specific threats. It also neglects the legal and regulatory obligation to implement security measures appropriate to the organization's circumstances. An approach that prioritizes the implementation of the latest security technologies without a corresponding policy framework and risk assessment is also flawed. While technology is crucial, its effectiveness is diminished without clear policies dictating its use, management, and the responsibilities of personnel. This can lead to misconfigurations, unauthorized access, and a failure to meet compliance mandates that require documented policies and procedures. Finally, an approach that focuses exclusively on developing a comprehensive policy document without considering the practicalities of implementation and enforcement, such as user awareness and ongoing review, is incomplete. A policy is only effective if it is understood, followed, and adapted. Neglecting these aspects renders the policy a mere formality, failing to achieve its intended security objectives and leaving the organization vulnerable. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with understanding the organization's specific context, including its business objectives, assets, and the regulatory environment. This should be followed by a thorough risk assessment to identify and prioritize potential threats and vulnerabilities. Based on the risk assessment, Security policies, standards, and procedures should be developed, ensuring alignment with legal and regulatory requirements. Implementation should include robust security awareness training tailored to identified risks. Finally, a continuous review and update process, informed by ongoing risk assessments and changes in the threat landscape or regulatory requirements, is essential for maintaining an effective security posture. Question 5. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a sophisticated phishing attack leading to a data breach. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and industry best practices for incident detection and analysis in this scenario? Option A. Rely solely on automated security tools to correlate alerts and generate a report, without significant human intervention for in-depth analysis or forensic examination. Option B. Focus on restoring affected systems to their last known good configuration as quickly as possible to minimize downtime, assuming the threat has been neutralized by the restoration process. Option C. Immediately isolate affected systems, perform forensic imaging of critical devices, analyze collected data for indicators of compromise and attack vectors, and initiate containment and eradication procedures based on findings, followed by detailed incident reporting. Option D. Prioritize public relations efforts to manage reputational damage. Issue a general statement about a potential security event, and then begin a reactive technical investigation. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolate affected systems, perform forensic imaging of critical devices, analyze collected data for indicators of compromise and attack vectors, and initiate containment and eradication procedures based on findings, followed by detailed incident reporting. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a sophisticated phishing attack leading to a data breach. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a rapid and accurate assessment of a dynamic threat, balancing immediate response with thorough analysis, all while adhering to strict regulatory requirements for incident handling and reporting. The pressure to contain the incident quickly can lead to hasty decisions that compromise the integrity of forensic evidence or overlook critical analytical steps. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes immediate containment and eradication, followed by detailed analysis and forensic investigation, and concludes with comprehensive reporting and remediation. This aligns with best practices in incident response, which emphasize a structured, methodical process. Specifically, regulatory frameworks for data protection and cybersecurity, such as those governing financial services or healthcare, depending on the CSCS exam-specific jurisdiction, which is assumed to be U.S.-based for this example, referencing NIST and relevant U.S. laws like HIPAA or GLBA, mandate timely detection, analysis, and reporting of security incidents. The correct approach ensures that all necessary steps are taken to understand the scope and impact of the incident, preserve evidence for potential legal or regulatory action, and prevent recurrence, thereby fulfilling legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive data and maintain system integrity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate system restoration without proper forensic imaging and analysis fails to meet regulatory requirements for incident investigation. This oversight can lead to the reintroduction of malware or exploitation of vulnerabilities that were not fully understood or addressed, potentially resulting in further breaches and significant regulatory penalties for non-compliance with data breach notification laws and security standards. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes external communication and public relations over internal technical analysis and containment is also professionally unsound. While transparency is important, premature or inaccurate public statements can mislead stakeholders, hinder the investigation, and violate regulatory mandates that require specific information to be reported to authorities within defined timeframes. This can also damage trust and lead to legal repercussions. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on automated alert correlation without human expert analysis risks misinterpreting or missing critical indicators of compromise. Automated systems are valuable tools, but they lack the nuanced understanding and contextual awareness of experienced security analysts. Over-reliance on automation can lead to false positives being ignored or genuine threats being misclassified, delaying a proper response and potentially allowing an incident to escalate, which is a failure to exercise due diligence as expected under cybersecurity best practices, and regulatory oversight. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a predefined incident response plan that clearly outlines roles, responsibilities, and procedures for detection, analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident activities. This plan should be regularly tested and updated. When an incident occurs, the team should activate the plan, prioritize actions based on the severity and potential impact, ensure clear communication channels are established, and meticulously document all actions taken. Continuous learning from each incident is crucial for refining the response strategy and strengthening overall security posture. Question 6. System analysis indicates that a significant portion of the organization's disaster recovery budget has been flagged for potential reduction by the finance department, citing a need for immediate cost savings. The proposed cuts would impact the frequency of off-site data backups and eliminate the budget allocated for regular disaster recovery plan testing and simulation exercises. As the certified security compliance specialist, you are tasked with advising on the implications of these proposed changes. Which of the following approaches best upholds your professional and regulatory responsibilities? Option A. Propose a compromise where off-site backups are reduced to quarterly, and testing is limited to an annual tabletop exercise, believing this balances cost savings with a minimal level of preparedness. Option B. Advocate strongly against the proposed budget cuts, emphasizing the critical regulatory requirements for data backup, off-site storage, and tested disaster recovery plans to ensure business continuity and data integrity, and present a detailed risk assessment of the potential consequences of reduced investment. Option C. Suggest that the IT department explore cloud-based backup solutions that might offer cost efficiencies, without explicitly detailing the regulatory implications of reducing current backup frequency and eliminating testing. Option D. Agree to the budget cuts to maintain a positive relationship with the finance department, assuming that the existing, albeit less frequent, on-site backups will suffice in most scenarios. The correct answer is B. Advocate strongly against the proposed budget cuts, emphasizing the critical regulatory requirements for data backup, off-site storage, and tested disaster recovery plans to ensure business continuity and data integrity, and present a detailed risk assessment of the potential consequences of reduced investment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between immediate cost-saving pressures and the long-term, critical need for robust disaster recovery and business continuity. The compliance specialist must balance the organization's financial health with its regulatory obligations and ethical responsibility to protect data and ensure operational resilience. Careful judgment is required to assess the true risks associated with inadequate planning and to advocate for necessary investments. The correct approach involves prioritizing the development and implementation of a comprehensive disaster recovery plan that includes regular testing, off-site data backup, and a well-defined business continuity strategy. This aligns with the fundamental principles of data protection and operational integrity mandated by regulatory frameworks. Specifically, for a U.S.-based organization, this would involve adherence to regulations like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial institutions, which mandates safeguarding customer information and maintaining business continuity, and HIPAA for healthcare, requiring protected health information to be available and secure even in the event of a disaster. The ethical imperative is to ensure the continued availability and integrity of sensitive data and to minimize disruption to services, thereby protecting customers, clients, and stakeholders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost reduction by neglecting off-site backups and regular testing would be professionally unacceptable. This failure directly contravenes regulatory requirements for data availability and recoverability, potentially leading to significant data loss, extended downtime, and severe financial penalties. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the organization's responsibility to protect its assets and maintain operational continuity, which can erode trust and damage reputation. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing a disaster recovery plan without regular testing or validation is also professionally flawed. While a plan may exist on paper, its effectiveness in a real disaster is unproven. This creates a false sense of security and fails to meet the spirit, if not the letter, of regulatory requirements that expect demonstrable readiness. The ethical failure lies in presenting a plan as adequate when its practical efficacy is unknown, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on on-site backups, even if frequent, is insufficient. While on-site backups are a component of a recovery strategy, they are vulnerable to the same localized disasters, fire, flood, etc., that could impact the primary systems. This approach fails to meet the regulatory requirement for off-site storage, which is a critical safeguard against catastrophic site-specific events. The ethical lapse is in failing to implement a layered defense that adequately protects against a wide range of potential disruptions. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. This means identifying critical business functions and data, understanding the potential impact of their unavailability, and evaluating the likelihood of various disaster scenarios. The specialist should then research and understand the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization's industry and location. Based on this, a cost-benefit analysis of different disaster recovery and business continuity strategies should be presented to management, highlighting not just the costs but also the potential costs of inaction, fines, lost revenue, reputational damage. Continuous monitoring, regular testing, and periodic review of the plan are essential to ensure its ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Question 7. The assessment process reveals that the organization's perimeter security relies heavily on a robust fence line and electronically controlled gates, but lacks adequate lighting in certain areas and has not formally defined or enforced distinct security zones around critical infrastructure. Considering the Certified Security Compliance Specialist, CSCS, regulatory framework, which of the following approaches best addresses these identified deficiencies? Option A. Focus on enhancing the physical strength and intrusion detection capabilities of the existing fence and gates, as these are the primary physical deterrents. Option B. Conduct a cost-benefit analysis to determine the most cost-effective way to improve the fence and gate systems, with minimal investment in lighting or zone management. Option C. Implement a comprehensive lighting upgrade plan for all identified dark spots, establish clear signage and physical demarcation for defined security zones, and develop protocols for zone access control and monitoring. Option D. Prioritize the installation of advanced surveillance cameras across the entire perimeter, assuming visual monitoring will compensate for lighting and zone definition gaps. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive lighting upgrade plan for all identified dark spots, establish clear signage and physical demarcation for defined security zones, and develop protocols for zone access control and monitoring. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing multiple, potentially conflicting, security objectives and stakeholder interests within the defined regulatory framework. The security specialist must not only identify vulnerabilities, but also propose solutions that are compliant, effective, and practical, considering the operational impact and cost. The core challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific requirements of the Certified Security Compliance Specialist, CSCS, regulatory framework to a real-world perimeter security situation, ensuring that all proposed measures meet the established standards without introducing new risks or violating compliance mandates. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of the existing perimeter security, focusing on the integration of fencing, gates, barriers, lighting, and defined security zones, while also considering environmental factors that could impact security effectiveness. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the CSCS emphasis on a holistic and integrated security posture. Specifically, it aligns with the CSCS mandate to ensure that physical security measures are not only present, but are also strategically deployed, adequately maintained, and contribute to the overall security objectives of the organization. The regulatory justification stems from the CSCS requirement for proactive risk management and the implementation of layered security controls that are demonstrably effective against identified threats. This includes ensuring that lighting levels are sufficient to deter intrusion and aid surveillance, that security zones are clearly demarcated and enforced, and that environmental controls, e.g., weatherproofing of equipment, consideration of natural barriers, are integrated to maintain operational integrity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the physical installation of fencing and gates without considering the effectiveness of lighting or the definition of security zones fails to meet the comprehensive requirements of the CSCS framework. This approach is deficient because it overlooks critical elements of perimeter security that are essential for deterrence, detection, and response. Regulatory failure lies in not implementing a layered security strategy as mandated by the CSCS, which requires multiple, overlapping security controls. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes aesthetic considerations over security functionality, such as selecting visually appealing but less robust barrier materials or inadequate lighting, is also professionally unacceptable. This approach violates the fundamental principle of security compliance, which dictates that security measures must be effective in mitigating risks, not merely compliant with superficial standards. The ethical failure here is prioritizing non-security-related factors over the organization's safety and the integrity of its assets, which is contrary to the CSCS duty of care. A further incorrect approach that neglects the establishment and enforcement of distinct security zones, allowing for uncontrolled access to sensitive areas, demonstrates a significant compliance gap. The CSCS framework emphasizes the importance of access control and the segregation of assets based on risk. Failing to define and manage security zones undermines the principle of least privilege and creates opportunities for unauthorized access, directly contravening the spirit and letter of security compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of the CSCS regulatory framework, a thorough threat and vulnerability assessment of the perimeter, and the development of a layered security strategy that integrates all specified elements: fencing, gates, barriers, lighting, security zones, environmental controls. This strategy must be evaluated for its effectiveness, compliance, and operational feasibility, with a clear justification for each proposed measure based on the regulatory requirements and identified risks. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and effectiveness. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates a desire for more transparent and actionable reporting on the organization's cybersecurity posture, moving beyond raw technical data to demonstrate the business impact of security initiatives and compliance adherence. As a certified security compliance specialist, which approach best addresses these needs while adhering to regulatory expectations for security performance reporting? Option A. Compile a detailed report containing all raw security logs and system alerts, assuming stakeholders can interpret the technical data to understand the security status. Option B. Develop a comprehensive dashboard that visualizes key security metrics, such as incident response times, vulnerability remediation rates, and the effectiveness of security awareness training, directly linking these to identified risks and compliance objectives. Option C. Create a dashboard that highlights the number of security incidents prevented, without detailing the nature of the incidents or the controls that led to their prevention. Option D. Focus reporting solely on the number of security tools deployed and their uptime, as this indicates investment in security infrastructure. The correct answer is B. Develop a comprehensive dashboard that visualizes key security metrics, such as incident response times, vulnerability remediation rates, and the effectiveness of security awareness training, directly linking these to identified risks and compliance objectives. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for comprehensive security reporting with the practical constraints of stakeholder understanding and the specific regulatory requirements of the Certified Security Compliance Specialist (CSCS) exam's jurisdiction. The CSCS exam focuses on a specific regulatory environment, assumed to be U.S.-based for this example, as no other jurisdiction was specified. Therefore, any security metrics and reporting must align with relevant U.S. regulations and guidance, such as those from NIST, SEC, or other applicable bodies, depending on the industry. The challenge lies in translating technical security performance into actionable insights that are meaningful to diverse stakeholders, including executive leadership, operational teams, and potentially regulators, while ensuring compliance with reporting obligations. The correct approach involves developing and presenting security metrics that are directly tied to organizational objectives and regulatory compliance requirements. This means selecting key performance indicators, KPI, that measure the effectiveness of security controls in mitigating risks relevant to the organization's operations and data, and that can be clearly communicated through dashboards and reports. These metrics should be actionable, allowing for informed decision-making and continuous improvement of the security posture. The regulatory justification stems from the need to demonstrate due diligence, risk management, and compliance with data protection and cybersecurity laws. For instance, reporting on incident response times or the effectiveness of vulnerability management directly addresses regulatory expectations for proactive security and incident handling. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical, granular data without context fails to meet the needs of non-technical stakeholders and may obscure the overall security posture. This can lead to misinterpretations, a lack of executive buy-in for necessary security investments, and potential noncompliance if critical risks are not adequately communicated. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes vanity metrics or metrics that are easy to report but do not reflect actual risk reduction or compliance status is also professionally unacceptable. Such metrics do not provide a true picture of security performance and can mislead decision-makers, potentially resulting in regulatory scrutiny or breaches. Furthermore, reporting that is inconsistent or fails to address specific regulatory reporting mandates would be a significant ethical and legal failure. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand stakeholder needs. Identify who the audience is and what information they require to make informed decisions. 2. Align with objectives and regulations. Determine how security metrics can demonstrate progress towards organizational goals and compliance with relevant laws and standards. 3. Select meaningful KPIs. Choose metrics that are measurable, relevant, actionable, and indicative of risk reduction or control effectiveness. 4. Develop clear reporting mechanisms. Design dashboards and reports that are visually appealing, easy to understand, and tailored to different audience levels. 5. Ensure data integrity and accuracy. Implement processes to collect and validate security data reliably. 6. Regularly review and adapt. Continuously evaluate the effectiveness of the metrics and reporting strategy, making adjustments as needed based on feedback and evolving threats or regulations. Question 9. Process analysis reveals that a financial institution is undergoing a significant renovation of its primary data center. The project plan outlines the construction of new server racks and upgraded cooling systems, but makes no specific mention of security enhancements or the integration of security personnel during the construction phases. The project is managed by an external construction firm with limited prior experience in highly regulated environments. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with facility security requirements during this renovation? Option A. Postpone all security considerations until after the renovation is fully completed and the facility is operational, at which point a new, comprehensive security assessment will be performed. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive security risk assessment specifically for the renovation project, integrate the findings into revised construction plans, and ensure continuous security oversight by a dedicated security team throughout the construction and renovation phases. Option C. Implement basic security measures such as temporary access logs and visible security guards at the main entrance, assuming the internal security of the data center will remain undisturbed by the construction activities. Option D. Rely on the external construction firm's standard safety protocols, assuming they will inherently maintain a secure environment, and conduct a final security walkthrough after the renovation is complete. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive security risk assessment specifically for the renovation project, integrate the findings into revised construction plans, and ensure continuous security oversight by a dedicated security team throughout the construction and renovation phases. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in facility security management, balancing evolving threat landscapes with the practicalities of construction and renovation. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that security considerations are not an afterthought but are integrated from the earliest stages of design and throughout the construction lifecycle, adhering to established compliance frameworks. Failure to do so can result in significant vulnerabilities, costly retrofits, and non-compliance with regulatory requirements. Careful judgment is required to prioritize security measures that are both effective and proportionate to the identified risks, while also considering budget and operational impact. The correct approach involves a proactive and integrated strategy. This means conducting thorough security risk assessments that inform the physical security design from the outset. During construction and renovation, continuous oversight and adherence to the approved security design are paramount. This includes ensuring that security features are installed correctly, materials used do not compromise security, and access controls are managed appropriately throughout the project. This approach aligns with the principles of due diligence and risk management mandated by regulatory frameworks that emphasize a security by design philosophy. For instance, in the U.S., frameworks like NIST SB 800-53, which is often referenced in compliance contexts for federal agencies and contractors, stresses the importance of integrating security into the system development lifecycle, which extends to physical infrastructure. Similarly, industry best practices and standards for physical security, often adopted as de facto compliance requirements, advocate for this integrated approach. An incorrect approach would be to treat security as a post-construction add-on. This often leads to superficial measures that do not address fundamental vulnerabilities. For example, simply installing cameras without considering sightlines, power redundancy, or data security would be a failure. Another incorrect approach is to allow construction crews unfettered access to sensitive areas or to permit deviations from the approved security design without proper review and authorization. This can introduce new risks, such as unauthorized surveillance, introduction of malware through infected devices, or the compromise of physical security barriers. Such actions would likely violate the spirit, if not the letter, of compliance requirements that mandate controlled environments and secure construction practices. Furthermore, neglecting to update security assessments after renovations can lead to a false sense of security, leaving the facility exposed to threats that have evolved since the initial assessment. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Understand the regulatory and compliance landscape relevant to the facility and its operations. 2. Conduct comprehensive and ongoing security risk assessments to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities. 3. Integrate security requirements into the facility's design and construction plans from the earliest stages. 4. Establish clear protocols for security oversight during construction and renovation, including change management procedures. 5. Regularly review and update security measures in response to evolving threats and operational changes. 6. Ensure that all security personnel and contractors are adequately trained and aware of their security responsibilities. Question 10. Governance review demonstrates that the organization's incident response plan lacks a clearly defined process for communicating with regulatory bodies and affected customers following a significant data breach. The current ad hoc approach relies on individual team members to decide when and what to communicate, leading to inconsistent messaging and potential delays in fulfilling mandatory reporting obligations. Which of the following approaches best addresses this deficiency and aligns with robust security compliance principles? Option A. Focus on developing comprehensive internal documentation of the incident, prioritizing the collection of all technical forensic data before initiating any external communication to ensure complete accuracy. Option B. Enhance the technical capabilities of the incident response team to expedite the identification and containment of the breach, assuming that effective technical resolution will naturally mitigate the need for extensive communication. Option C. Delegate the responsibility for all external communication to the legal department, allowing them to manage communications independently once they deem it appropriate, without direct input from the incident response team. Option D. Implement a tiered communication protocol within the incident response plan, outlining specific notification triggers, content, and timelines for regulatory bodies, affected individuals, and internal stakeholders, with designated communication leads for each category. The correct answer is D. Implement a tiered communication protocol within the incident response plan, outlining specific notification triggers, content, and timelines for regulatory bodies, affected individuals, and internal stakeholders, with designated communication leads for each category. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term strategic imperative of regulatory compliance and stakeholder trust. The pressure to quickly restore services after a significant security incident can lead to shortcuts that compromise the integrity of the incident response process, potentially leading to further breaches, regulatory penalties, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the response is both effective in mitigating the current threat and robust enough to satisfy compliance obligations and prevent recurrence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, multi-stakeholder communication plan that prioritizes clear, timely, and accurate information dissemination to all relevant parties, including regulatory bodies, affected customers, and internal leadership. This aligns with the principles of transparency and accountability mandated by various security compliance frameworks. Specifically, it addresses the requirement for effective communication protocols during an incident, ensuring that all stakeholders are informed according to their needs and regulatory obligations. This proactive and organized communication strategy helps manage expectations, mitigate panic, and demonstrate a commitment to responsible incident handling, which is a cornerstone of robust security compliance. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that focuses solely on technical remediation without a defined communication strategy fails to address the broader compliance and stakeholder management aspects of incident response. This can lead to regulatory noncompliance due to delayed or inadequate reporting, and can erode customer trust if they are not informed appropriately. An approach that prioritizes internal communication over external stakeholder notification overlooks critical regulatory requirements for reporting breaches to authorities and informing affected individuals. This can result in significant legal and financial penalties, as well as severe reputational damage. An approach that delays communication until all technical details are fully understood, while seemingly thorough, can be detrimental. Many regulatory frameworks require notification within specific timeframes, regardless of complete technical certainty. This delay can be interpreted as a failure to comply with reporting obligations and can exacerbate stakeholder concerns. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that integrates incident classification and prioritization with predefined communication protocols. This framework should involve 1. Rapidly assessing the incident's impact and scope to determine its classification and priority. 2. Activating the incident response plan, which includes immediate notification of key internal stakeholders and designated communication channels. 3. Executing the communication plan based on the incident's classification, ensuring timely and accurate updates to regulatory bodies, affected parties, and other relevant external stakeholders, adhering to all legal and contractual notification requirements. 4. Continuously reviewing and updating communication as the incident evolves, maintaining transparency and managing stakeholder expectations throughout the response and recovery phases. Question 11. The performance metrics show that the organization's actual recovery times for several critical business functions consistently exceed the recovery time objectives (RTO) established in the Business Continuity Plan (BCP). The Business Impact Analysis (BIA) has not been updated in over 2 years. What is the most appropriate course of action for the certified security compliance specialist? Option A. Advise the IT department to focus solely on optimizing system performance for the affected critical functions, assuming this will automatically bring recovery times within the established RTOs. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the BIA to identify the root causes of the performance gaps and collaborate with business and IT stakeholders to develop and implement remediation strategies, potentially leading to revised RTOS/RPOs if justified by the updated BIA and risk assessment. Option C. Document the performance discrepancies as a known risk and continue with the existing BCP, as the BIA is still considered valid until its scheduled review date. Option D. Immediately revise the documented RTOs and RPOs within the BCP to align with the current observed recovery times, without further analysis, to ensure immediate documentation compliance. Correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive review of the BIA to identify the root causes of the performance gaps and collaborate with business and IT stakeholders to develop and implement remediation strategies, potentially leading to revised RTOS/RPOs if justified by the updated BIA and risk assessment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in business continuity planning, a discrepancy between theoretical recovery objectives and practical operational realities. The challenge lies in balancing the need to meet regulatory requirements for recovery, RTO and RPO, with the actual capabilities and resource constraints of the organization. A compliance specialist must navigate this tension, ensuring that plans are not only documented, but also achievable and demonstrably effective, without compromising the organization's ability to resume critical functions within acceptable timeframes. The risk of failing to meet regulatory expectations, leading to potential fines or reputational damage, is significant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the BIA and its alignment with current operational capabilities and the established RTOS/RPOs. This requires engaging with IT and business unit leaders to understand the root causes of the performance gaps identified in the metrics. The focus should be on identifying specific technical or procedural impediments to achieving the defined recovery objectives. Once identified, the compliance specialist must then collaborate with stakeholders to develop actionable remediation plans. These plans might involve technology upgrades, process reengineering, or adjustments to resource allocation. Crucially, any proposed changes to RTOs or RPOs must be justified by a revised BIA and formally approved, ensuring that the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations are still met. This approach directly addresses the identified performance issues by seeking practical solutions that uphold compliance and operational resilience, aligning with the principles of robust business continuity management expected under regulatory frameworks. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring the performance metrics and proceeding with existing plans, despite evidence of potential noncompliance, represents a failure to proactively manage risk and uphold regulatory obligations. This approach assumes that the documented plans are sufficient, which is contradicted by the data. It creates a significant compliance gap and leaves the organization vulnerable to disruptions. Simply adjusting the documented RTOs and RPOs downwards to match the observed performance metrics without a corresponding reassessment of the BIA and business impact is a serious regulatory and ethical failure. This is essentially an attempt to cook the books to appear compliant, rather than addressing the underlying operational deficiencies. It misrepresents the organization's true recovery capabilities and can lead to severe consequences if a disaster occurs. Focusing solely on IT infrastructure without considering the broader business processes and dependencies identified in the BIA is an incomplete approach. Business continuity is not just about restoring systems. It's about restoring critical business functions. This narrow focus will likely result in plans that are technically sound but operationally ineffective, failing to meet the overall objectives of business continuity. Professional reasoning. Professionals must adopt a data-driven and risk-aware approach to business continuity planning. The decision-making process should begin with acknowledging and investigating performance data that indicates potential deviations from planned recovery capabilities. This involves a systematic review of the BIA to ensure it accurately reflects business criticality and dependencies. Subsequently, a gap analysis between current capabilities and defined RTOS/RPOs is essential. Remediation efforts should be prioritized based on the criticality of the affected functions and the severity of the compliance risk. Any proposed changes to recovery objectives must be supported by a revised BIA and a clear understanding of the residual risk. Collaboration with business and IT stakeholders is paramount throughout this process to ensure that solutions are practical, effective, and sustainable, ultimately leading to a resilient and compliant organization. Question 12. The control framework reveals that the organization's current security awareness program consists of a single, annual mandatory online module covering general cybersecurity threats, followed by quarterly company-wide phishing simulations. The program's effectiveness is measured solely by the completion rate of the online module and the overall click-through rate on phishing emails. Considering the diverse roles and responsibilities across departments, which of the following approaches would best enhance the program's effectiveness and compliance with best practices for security awareness and training? Option A. Implement a mandatory security champion program where a few employees from each department are trained to disseminate security information to their colleagues. Option B. Develop and implement role-based training modules that address specific threats and responsibilities relevant to different employee groups, and measure effectiveness through a combination of comprehension assessments, behavioral observation, and targeted phishing simulations. Option C. Focus on creating more engaging and visually appealing content for the annual online module, incorporating gamification elements to boost employee interest and completion rates. Option D. Increase the frequency of the annual online module to a biannual delivery, and expand the scope of the quarterly phishing simulations to include more complex social engineering scenarios. The correct answer is B. Develop and implement role-based training modules that address specific threats and responsibilities relevant to different employee groups, and measure effectiveness through a combination of comprehension assessments, behavioral observation, and targeted phishing simulations. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for comprehensive security awareness with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the diverse needs of an organization's workforce. A one-size-fits-all approach to training is rarely effective, and failing to tailor training can lead to disengagement, reduced comprehension, and ultimately, increased vulnerability. The effectiveness of security awareness programs is directly tied to their relevance and accessibility to the individuals receiving them. The correct approach involves developing and delivering role-based security awareness training that directly addresses the specific threats and responsibilities relevant to different employee groups. This ensures that training is not only informative but also actionable, increasing the likelihood of behavioral change and improved security posture. This aligns with the principles of effective risk management and the ethical obligation to protect organizational assets and sensitive data by equipping employees with the knowledge and skills they need to identify and mitigate threats pertinent to their roles. Regulatory frameworks often emphasize the importance of tailored training to address specific risks and responsibilities within an organization. An approach that focuses solely on generic, company-wide phishing simulations without considering the varying levels of access and types of data handled by different departments is professionally flawed. This fails to acknowledge that employees in customer service, for example, may face different social engineering tactics than those in IT administration. This lack of specificity can lead to training that is either too basic for some or overly technical for others, diminishing its overall impact and potentially creating a false sense of security. It also represents a failure to adequately assess and address the unique risks associated with different roles, which is a cornerstone of effective compliance. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize the delivery of a large volume of training content over its actual comprehension and application. Simply checking a box for completion without measuring understanding or behavioral change is a superficial compliance effort. This approach neglects the core purpose of security awareness training, which is to foster a security-conscious culture and reduce human error. It also fails to meet the spirit, if not the letter, of regulatory requirements that mandate effective training, not just perfunctory delivery. Finally, an approach that relies on outdated training materials or infrequent updates is also professionally unsound. The threat landscape evolves rapidly, and training must keep pace. Failing to update content to reflect current phishing techniques, social engineering tactics, and emerging threats renders the training ineffective and leaves the organization exposed to risks that employees are not prepared to recognize or counter. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence in maintaining an effective security awareness program. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment to identify the most critical threats and vulnerabilities, followed by an analysis of different employee roles and their associated risks. This information should then be used to design and deliver targeted, role-based training modules. Continuous evaluation of training effectiveness through metrics beyond simple completion rates, such as incident reporting, phishing simulation success rates, and observed behavioral changes, is crucial for iterative improvement. Regular review and updating of training content based on the evolving threat landscape and organizational changes are also essential components of a robust security awareness program. Question 13. Upon reviewing the initial findings of a security incident, the Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, of a U.S.-based financial services company has confirmed that personally identifiable information, PI, of customers has been accessed by an unauthorized party. The full scope and impact of the breach are still under investigation, with forensic analysis ongoing. The CISO is aware that under applicable U.S. federal and state data breach notification laws, there are strict timelines for notifying affected individuals and relevant authorities. The CISO is considering two primary options. 1. Delaying notification until the complete forensic investigation is finished and all details are confirmed. Or 2. initiating notification immediately with the available preliminary information, clearly stating that the investigation is ongoing and further details may be provided, which approach best aligns with the requirements of U.S. data privacy regulations and professional best practices for data breach response. Option A. Issue a general public statement acknowledging a security event without specifying PII compromise or affected individuals. Option B. Delay notification until the complete forensic investigation is finished and all details are confirmed. Option C. Notify only the relevant supervisory authorities and not affected individuals, as the full impact is not yet known. Option D. Initiate notification immediately with the available preliminary information, clearly stating that the investigation is ongoing and further details may be provided. The correct answer is D. Initiate notification immediately with the available preliminary information, clearly stating that the investigation is ongoing and further details may be provided. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in data privacy compliance, balancing the need for timely data breach notification with the practical difficulties of gathering complete information. The professional challenge lies in making a judgment call under pressure, where a delay could lead to regulatory penalties and reputational damage, while in premature notification might be inaccurate or incomplete, also causing harm. Careful consideration of the specific regulatory requirements for breach notification is paramount. The correct approach involves initiating the notification process as soon as feasible, even if all details are not yet confirmed, while clearly indicating the preliminary nature of the information. This aligns with the principle of transparency and the regulatory obligation to inform affected individuals and supervisory authorities without undue delay. The justification is rooted in the spirit of data protection laws, which prioritize the timely protection of individuals' rights and interests. By notifying early and acknowledging the ongoing investigation, the organization demonstrates a commitment to compliance and mitigates potential harm by allowing individuals to take protective measures sooner. An incorrect approach would be to withhold notification until every single detail of the breach is definitively ascertained. This failure to notify without undue delay directly contravenes the core requirements of data breach notification regulations. Such a delay could result in significant fines and sanctions from supervisory authorities, as well as erosion of trust from customers and partners. Another incorrect approach would be to issue a notification that is deliberately misleading or omits critical information due to a desire to downplay the severity of the incident. This constitutes a serious ethical and regulatory failure, as it undermines the purpose of notification, which is to enable individuals to understand and respond to the risks posed by the breach. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the specific notification triggers and timelines stipulated by the relevant data privacy regulations. They should then establish an internal process for assessing breaches, which includes a clear escalation path and defined roles for determining when notification is required. When a breach occurs, the focus should be on gathering enough information to provide a meaningful notification, even if it is preliminary, and to clearly communicate the ongoing nature of the investigation. This proactive and transparent approach, coupled with a commitment to fulfilling all regulatory obligations, is key to effective data privacy compliance. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that several redundant systems and failover mechanisms are not actively utilized due to perceived high operational costs. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of operational resilience and regulatory compliance for building resilient systems and processes? Option A. Postpone the implementation of new failover mechanisms and capacity planning until a significant operational disruption has demonstrably impacted the organization's ability to deliver critical services. Option B. Immediately decommission underutilized redundant systems to realize immediate cost savings, and rely on manual workarounds and incident response teams to address any disruptions that may occur. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical systems and processes, then prioritize the implementation of redundancy and failover mechanisms for those deemed most vulnerable, while also developing robust capacity planning to handle peak loads and potential surges. Option D. Focus solely on optimizing the performance of existing single systems, assuming that proactive investment in redundancy is an unnecessary expense given the current low incidence of system failures. Correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical systems and processes, then prioritize the implementation of redundancy and failover mechanisms for those deemed most vulnerable, while also developing robust capacity planning to handle peak loads and potential surges. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate cost-saving pressures of an efficiency study against the long-term imperative of maintaining robust operational resilience, a core tenet of security compliance. The tension lies in identifying and mitigating single points of failure without incurring significant upfront investment, which can be difficult to justify to stakeholders focused solely on short-term financial gains. Careful judgment is required to articulate the risks associated with neglecting resilience and to propose solutions that are both effective and economically viable. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of critical systems and processes to identify potential single points of failure, and then implementing a layered strategy of redundancy and failover mechanisms. This directly aligns with the principles of operational resilience mandated by regulatory frameworks that emphasize the need for organizations to prevent, respond to, recover from, and learn from operational disruptions. Specifically, regulations often require that critical business services remain available and that the organization can recover within defined timeframes. Proactively building in redundancy and failover ensures that the failure of a single component does not lead to a complete service outage, thereby meeting these regulatory expectations and safeguarding against financial and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on eliminating redundant systems to reduce immediate operational costs fails to acknowledge the inherent risks of single points of failure. This approach directly contravenes regulatory requirements for operational resilience by increasing the likelihood and impact of service disruptions. Such a decision would be ethically questionable, as it prioritizes short-term financial benefits over the organization's ability to maintain essential functions and protect its customers or stakeholders. Another incorrect approach that involves deferring the implementation of failover mechanisms until a failure actually occurs is also professionally unacceptable. This reactive stance ignores the proactive nature of operational resilience expected by regulators. It creates a significant ethical risk by knowingly operating with vulnerabilities that could lead to substantial harm if exploited or if an unforeseen event occurs. The regulatory expectation is to have these mechanisms in place before an incident, not to scramble to implement them afterward. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based approach. First, thoroughly understand the regulatory landscape and its specific requirements for operational resilience. Second, conduct a detailed assessment of critical systems and processes to identify all potential single points of failure and their potential impact. Third, evaluate various mitigation strategies, including redundancy, failover, and robust capacity planning, considering both their effectiveness and cost efficiency. Fourth, present a clear business case to stakeholders, articulating the risks of inaction and the benefits of investing in resilience, referencing specific regulatory obligations. Finally, prioritize implementation based on the criticality of the identified risks and regulatory deadlines. Question 15. Benchmark analysis indicates that an organization's wireless network security is a critical control point for protecting sensitive data. Considering the evolution of wireless security protocols and potential vulnerabilities, which of the following represents the most robust and compliant approach for a certified security compliance specialist to recommend for enhancing wireless network security? Option A. Disable all wireless security protocols to simplify network management and eliminate potential configuration errors, relying solely on VPNs for data protection. Option B. Maintain existing WPA2 configurations, focusing on user education regarding strong password practices, as upgrading to WPA3 is not yet mandated by current regulations. Option C. Implement a VPN for all wireless traffic, as this provides end-to-end encryption, making the underlying wireless security protocol less critical. Option D. Prioritize the implementation of WPA3 where supported by devices, and ensure all WPA2 deployments utilize strong encryption, AES-CCMP, robust authentication methods, e.g., WPA2 Enterprise with Radius, and are regularly audited for compliance with security best practices. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the implementation of WPA3 where supported by devices, and ensure all WPA2 deployments utilize strong encryption, AESCCMP, robust authentication methods, e.g., WPA2 Enterprise with Radius, and are regularly audited for compliance with security best practices. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a security compliance specialist to evaluate the effectiveness of network security controls against evolving threats, specifically focusing on the implementation and management of wireless security protocols. The challenge lies in discerning the most robust and compliant approach among several technically plausible options, ensuring alignment with regulatory expectations for data protection and network integrity. Careful judgment is required to balance security efficacy with operational feasibility and compliance mandates. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation and upgrade strategy for wireless security, prioritizing WPA3 implementation where feasible and ensuring robust WPA2 configurations with strong authentication mechanisms as a fallback. This is justified by regulatory frameworks that mandate appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data and prevent unauthorized access. Specifically, regulations like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, often referenced in US-based CSCS exams, emphasize continuous monitoring and improvement of security controls, including wireless network security. Adopting WPA3 directly addresses known vulnerabilities in WPA2 and aligns with best practices for modern network security, demonstrating a proactive stance on compliance. An incorrect approach that relies solely on existing WPA2 configurations without assessing their current strength or planning for WPA3 migration fails to meet the standard of appropriate technical and organizational measures. While WPA2 can be secure, its widespread use without regular security audits and adherence to best practices, e.g., using strong, unique passphrases, disabling WPS, and avoiding older encryption modes like TKIP, leaves the network vulnerable to known exploits, potentially violating data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach that proposes disabling wireless security entirely to simplify management is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This would constitute a gross negligence in protecting sensitive data, directly contravening data privacy laws and cybersecurity best practices. It would expose the network to immediate and widespread unauthorized access, leading to data breaches and significant legal and reputational consequences. A third incorrect approach that suggests implementing a VPN for all wireless traffic without addressing the underlying wireless security itself is also flawed. While VPNs provide encryption for data in transit, they do not inherently secure the wireless access point from unauthorized connections. An unsecured wireless network can still be compromised, allowing attackers to intercept traffic before it even reaches the VPN, or to gain access to the internal network through other means. This approach fails to address the foundational security of the wireless network itself, which is a critical component of overall network security. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a layered approach. First, understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the organization's data and industry. Second, conducting a thorough risk assessment of existing network protocols and technologies, including wireless security. Third, evaluating available security technologies and best practices, such as the transition to WPA3. And fourth, developing and implementing a phased strategy that prioritizes the most critical security enhancements while ensuring compliance and operational continuity. This involves staying abreast of evolving threats and recommended security standards. Question 16. Examination of the data shows that a financial institution is considering upgrading its physical security measures for a data center housing sensitive customer financial information. The current system includes basic key card access and limited CCTV coverage in common areas. The institution is exploring options to enhance access control and surveillance within the data center itself, aiming to meet regulatory expectations for safeguarding sensitive data. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of robust physical security and regulatory compliance for a financial institution? Option A. Upgrade to a more advanced key card system with logging capabilities and install additional CCTV cameras in the main server room only, relying on existing perimeter security for overall protection. Option B. Contract with an external security firm to provide guards who patrol the building exterior but do not have access to the data center itself, and upgrade the key card system to one that requires a PIN code. Option C. Install a basic motion detection system at the data center entrance and rely solely on the existing key card system, assuming that the sensitivity of the data is adequately protected by these measures. Option D. Implement a multi-factor biometric access control system for all entry points to the data center and deploy high-resolution CCTV cameras with continuous recording and analytics capabilities throughout the interior, coupled with a regular schedule of internal security patrols. The correct answer is D. Implement a multi-factor biometric access control system for all entry points to the data center and deploy high-resolution CCTV cameras with continuous recording and analytics capabilities throughout the interior, coupled with a regular schedule of internal security patrols. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the operational needs of a financial institution with stringent regulatory requirements for physical security and data protection. The CSCS professional must make a decision that upholds compliance without unduly hindering legitimate business operations. The core of the challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant regulations to a practical situation involving access control and surveillance. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that considers the sensitivity of the data and assets being protected, the potential threats, and the effectiveness of existing controls. This approach aligns with the principles of due diligence and prudent risk management mandated by financial sector regulations. Specifically, it requires the implementation of layered security measures, including robust access controls and appropriate surveillance, to deter unauthorized access and detect intrusions. The regulatory framework for financial institutions, such as those overseen by the SEC and FINRA in the U.S., emphasizes the need for strong internal controls, which encompass physical security, to safeguard customer assets and sensitive information. This proactive and risk-based methodology ensures that security investments are proportionate to the identified risks and meet compliance obligations. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the presence of a single security measure, such as only implementing key card access without considering other vulnerabilities. This fails to acknowledge that no single control is foolproof and that a layered defense is essential for effective security. Regulations often require a holistic approach to security, not just a superficial implementation of one component. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings over security effectiveness by opting for the cheapest available surveillance system, even if it does not provide adequate coverage or image quality. This demonstrates a failure to meet the regulatory expectation of implementing controls that are fit for purpose and capable of deterring or detecting security incidents. Furthermore, neglecting to regularly review and update security protocols in response to evolving threats or changes in the business environment would also be a significant compliance failure, as regulations typically require ongoing vigilance and adaptation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to their industry and jurisdiction. This is followed by a thorough risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities. Based on this assessment, appropriate security controls should be selected and implemented, ensuring they are layered and complementary. Regular testing, auditing, and review of these controls are crucial to ensure their continued effectiveness and compliance with evolving regulations and threat landscapes. This systematic process ensures that decisions are not only compliant, but also strategically sound and protective of the organization's assets and reputation. Question 17. Assessment of the most effective strategy for implementing a comprehensive personnel security background check process for new hires within a regulated financial services firm, considering the need to balance security requirements with efficient onboarding timelines. Option A. Initiate the background check process immediately upon acceptance of a conditional offer of employment, allowing it to run concurrently with other onboarding activities. Option B. Commence background checks only after the employee has been fully onboarded and granted access to all necessary systems. Option C. Conduct background checks on a random, ad hoc basis as deemed necessary by the hiring manager. Option D. Delay the initiation of background checks until the employee's first day of employment. The correct answer is A. Initiate the background check process immediately upon acceptance of a conditional offer of employment, allowing it to run concurrently with other onboarding activities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in personnel security, balancing the need for thorough vetting with the practicalities of onboarding new employees in a time-sensitive environment. The challenge lies in ensuring that all required background checks are completed to a satisfactory standard without unduly delaying the start date of a critical hire. Failure to adequately vet personnel can lead to significant security risks, including unauthorized access to sensitive information, reputational damage, and potential regulatory penalties. Conversely, excessive delays can impact business operations and competitiveness. Professional judgment is required to navigate these competing demands effectively. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves initiating the background check process immediately upon a conditional offer of employment being accepted. This proactive measure allows the vetting process to run concurrently with other pre-employment activities, such as onboarding paperwork and system access provisioning. By starting early and maintaining clear communication with the candidate and the background check vendor, the organization can identify and address any potential issues promptly. This approach aligns with the principles of robust personnel security by ensuring that individuals are properly vetted before gaining access to sensitive systems or information, thereby mitigating risks. It also demonstrates a commitment to efficient onboarding, which is crucial for employee morale and operational continuity. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and insider threat mitigation, implicitly or explicitly require due diligence in personnel vetting. Incorrect approach is analysis. Delaying the initiation of background checks until after the employee's first day is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach creates a window of vulnerability where an individual with potentially disqualifying information could have access to sensitive assets without proper vetting. This directly contravenes the principle of least privilege and the fundamental requirement to know your employees. It exposes the organization to unacceptable risks and could lead to severe penalties if a security incident occurs. Initiating background checks only after an employee has been fully onboarded and has access to all systems is equally problematic. This approach is reactive rather than proactive and significantly increases the risk profile. It implies a lack of commitment to pre-employment screening and suggests that security is an afterthought. This would be a clear violation of due diligence requirements and could be viewed as negligence in the event of a breach. Conducting background checks on a random, ad hoc basis without a clear policy or schedule is also an unacceptable approach. This lack of systematic process undermines the integrity of the personnel security program. It creates inconsistencies in vetting standards and leaves the organization vulnerable to gaps in its security posture. Such an approach would likely fail to meet regulatory expectations for a comprehensive and consistent security program. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based and proactive approach to personnel security. The decision-making process should prioritize the timely and thorough vetting of all personnel who will have access to sensitive information or systems. This involves establishing clear policies and procedures for background checks, ensuring that these processes are initiated as early as possible in the hiring lifecycle, and maintaining open communication channels to manage expectations and address any issues that arise. Professionals must understand the regulatory landscape and ethical obligations related to personnel security and implement controls that effectively mitigate identified risks. When faced with time pressures, the focus should remain on completing essential security checks before granting full access, rather than compromising on security to meet arbitrary deadlines. Question 18. Which approach would be most effective and compliant for an organization seeking to mitigate insider threats through policy, employee behavior monitoring, and data loss prevention, while adhering to strict privacy and legal standards? Option A. Focus solely on post-incident investigations and disciplinary actions after a data breach has occurred, without proactive monitoring or preventative measures. Option B. Deploy extensive, continuous surveillance of all employee communications and computer activity, with minimal transparency to employees to capture any potential malicious actions. Option C. Install DLP software with broad data blocking capabilities and rely on IT to manage alerts without explicit employee policies or training on data handling. Option D. Implement a comprehensive insider threat program with clearly defined policies, transparent monitoring practices, robust DLP controls, and regular employee training on data security and acceptable behavior. Correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive insider threat program with clearly defined policies, transparent monitoring practices, robust DLP controls, and regular employee training on data security and acceptable behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between an organization's need to protect sensitive data and its obligation to respect employee privacy and adhere to labor laws. Striking the right balance requires a nuanced understanding of regulatory requirements and ethical considerations. The risk of overreach in monitoring can lead to legal repercussions and damage employee morale, while insufficient monitoring leaves the organization vulnerable to insider threats. The correct approach involves implementing a comprehensive insider threat mitigation program that prioritizes data protection through a layered strategy. This includes clearly defined policies that outline acceptable employee behavior and the scope of monitoring, robust technical controls like data loss prevention, DLP, systems configured to detect and prevent unauthorized data exfiltration, and regular employee training on security awareness and data handling protocols. This approach is ethically sound and legally defensible, as it focuses on protecting organizational assets and complying with data protection regulations by being transparent with employees about monitoring practices and ensuring that monitoring is proportionate to the identified risks. An approach that relies solely on broad, unfettered surveillance of all employee communications without specific triggers or clear policy justification would be ethically problematic and potentially violate privacy laws. Such a method lacks proportionality and could be seen as an invasion of privacy, leading to legal challenges and a breakdown of trust. Another incorrect approach would be to implement DLP solutions without clear policies or employee training. This creates a technical solution in a vacuum, leading to potential false positives, employee confusion, and a lack of understanding regarding the purpose and limitations of the monitoring. It fails to address the human element of insider threats and can be perceived as overly punitive rather than preventative. Finally, an approach that focuses only on reactive measures, such as investigating incidents after they occur without proactive detection or prevention mechanisms, is insufficient. This neglects the critical need for early detection and prevention of insider threats, leaving the organization exposed to significant risks and potential data breaches. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment to identify specific insider threat vectors. This should be followed by the development of clear, transparent policies that are communicated to all employees. Technical controls, such as DLP, should be implemented in alignment with these policies and regularly reviewed. Continuous employee training and awareness programs are crucial to foster a security-conscious culture. This holistic approach ensures that data protection measures are effective, legally compliant, and ethically sound. Question 19. Implementation of a new cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) system for a mid-sized financial services firm requires a comprehensive risk assessment. The firm operates under stringent data privacy regulations and must ensure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of sensitive customer information. The chosen risk assessment methodology must effectively identify potential threats to the CRM data, vulnerabilities in the system's configuration and access controls, and the potential business impacts of a security incident, while also informing appropriate mitigation strategies. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the requirements for a Certified Security Compliance Specialist, CSCS, in this scenario? Option A. Employ a hybrid risk assessment methodology that combines qualitative analysis to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities with quantitative analysis to estimate the financial impact of data breaches and service disruptions, ensuring the methodology supports a business impact analysis, BIA, and informs the selection of avoidance, transfer, acceptance, or mitigation strategies. Option B. Conduct a purely qualitative risk assessment, focusing on descriptive categories of risk likelihood and impact, without attempting to quantify financial losses or operational downtime, as this is sufficient for identifying general security concerns. Option C. Implement a highly detailed quantitative risk assessment that requires extensive data collection and complex statistical modeling to assign precise monetary values to all potential risks, even if it significantly delays the deployment of the new CRM system. Option D. Prioritize the identification of technical vulnerabilities within the CRM system's architecture and code, assuming that addressing these will inherently mitigate all associated business risks. The correct answer is A. Employ a hybrid risk assessment methodology that combines qualitative analysis to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities with quantitative analysis to estimate the financial impact of data breaches and service disruptions, ensuring the methodology supports a business impact analysis, BIA, and informs the selection of avoidance, transfer, acceptance, or mitigation strategies. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in security compliance, balancing the need for robust risk management with the practical constraints of a business. The professional challenge lies in selecting a risk assessment methodology that is both effective in identifying significant threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts, and feasible for the organization to implement and maintain. A superficial or overly complex approach can lead to misallocation of resources, missed critical risks, or an unmanageable compliance burden. Careful judgment is required to align the chosen methodology with the organization's specific context, risk appetite, and regulatory obligations. The correct approach involves selecting a risk analysis methodology that is appropriate for the organization's size, complexity, and the nature of its assets and operations, while also aligning with the principles of a business impact analysis, BIA. This methodology should enable the identification of threats, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts, and inform the development of effective risk mitigation strategies. For a certified security compliance specialist, CSCS, this means adhering to established frameworks and guidelines that promote a systematic and documented approach to risk management, ensuring that all identified risks are appropriately assessed and addressed according to their potential impact on business continuity and regulatory compliance. The chosen strategy should be practical to implement and maintain, allowing for regular review and updates. An approach that relies solely on qualitative assessment without considering quantitative impacts can lead to an underestimation of financial or operational consequences, potentially resulting in inadequate mitigation efforts. This fails to meet the comprehensive nature of risk management expected under CSCS standards, which often require a demonstrable understanding of potential business disruption. An approach that prioritizes overly complex quantitative analysis without a clear understanding of the organization's data availability or analytical capabilities can result in an impractical and resource-intensive process. This can lead to delays in risk identification and mitigation, and may not be sustainable for the organization, thereby failing to achieve effective security compliance. An approach that focuses exclusively on technical vulnerabilities without considering the broader business impact and the potential for threats to exploit them is incomplete. This overlooks the critical link between technical security and business continuity, which is a core tenet of security compliance. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the organization's business objectives, regulatory landscape, and existing risk management capabilities. A CSCS should first conduct a preliminary assessment of the organization's needs and resources. Then, they should evaluate various risk assessment methodologies against these requirements, considering their ability to identify threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts, and their suitability for developing mitigation strategies. The chosen methodology should be documented, communicated to stakeholders, and integrated into the organization's overall governance framework. Regular review and adaptation of the chosen approach are essential to ensure its continued effectiveness. Question 20. Market research demonstrates that organizations face increasing threats from both sophisticated external actors employing social engineering tactics and internal individuals who may pose a risk, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Considering the need for effective security awareness and training programs to mitigate these risks, which of the following approaches best aligns with robust compliance and ethical security practices? Option A. Focus training efforts exclusively on external phishing and malware threats, with minimal attention given to the potential for insider threats or the human element in security breaches. Option B. Conduct a single, annual mandatory training session that covers general cybersecurity principles, with a focus on password hygiene and basic malware awareness. Option C. Invest heavily in advanced technical security controls and firewalls, assuming that robust technology will negate the need for extensive employee training, Option D. Implement a comprehensive program that includes regular, updated training modules covering a wide range of threats, frequent phishing simulations, and specialized training on identifying and reporting insider threats, tailored to different employee roles and responsibilities. The correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive program that includes regular, updated training modules covering a wide range of threats, frequent phishing simulations, and specialized training on identifying and reporting insider threats, tailored to different employee roles and responsibilities. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for robust security awareness and training with the practical constraints of budget and employee time. Organizations must ensure their programs are effective in mitigating insider threats and social engineering risks without becoming overly burdensome or perceived as irrelevant by staff. The effectiveness of a security awareness program is directly tied to its ability to foster a security-conscious culture, which requires ongoing, relevant, and engaging training. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that integrates various training methods tailored to different roles and threat landscapes. This approach is right because it acknowledges that a one-size-fits-all program is insufficient. By incorporating regular, updated training modules, phishing simulations, and specific modules on insider threats, organizations align with the principles of due diligence and risk management expected under general data protection and cybersecurity frameworks. Such a program demonstrates a proactive commitment to protecting sensitive information and systems, which is a core requirement for compliance and ethical conduct. The focus on practical application through simulations and role-specific content ensures that employees understand how to identify and respond to threats in their daily work, thereby reducing the likelihood of successful attacks. An approach that relies solely on annual, generic training fails because it is unlikely to keep pace with evolving threats, particularly in social engineering and insider threat tactics. This superficial compliance does not foster a strong security culture and leaves employees ill-equipped to handle sophisticated attacks. It also neglects the specific nuances of insider threats, which require a different focus than external attacks. An approach that prioritizes technical controls over human awareness is incorrect because it overlooks the significant role employees play in the security chain. While technical measures are vital, they are often bypassed by social engineering or insider actions. A program that neglects comprehensive security awareness and training for all personnel, regardless of their technical role, creates a critical vulnerability. An approach that focuses exclusively on external threats and ignores insider threats is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Insider threats, whether malicious or unintentional, pose a substantial risk. Failing to train employees on recognizing and reporting suspicious behavior from colleagues or their own potential missteps leaves the organization exposed. This selective training demonstrates a lack of comprehensive risk assessment and mitigation strategy. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment to identify the most prevalent and impactful threats, including both external and internal ones. This assessment should inform the design of a layered security awareness and training program. The program should be regularly reviewed and updated based on threat intelligence and incident analysis. Furthermore, it should incorporate metrics to measure effectiveness and identify areas for improvement. The goal is to create a culture of security where awareness is continuous, training is relevant and engaging, and employees feel empowered to be active participants in protecting the organization.